For our Moose in the Wild segment on this episode, it gives me great pleasure to welcome Glaze Bay's very own former Mooseheads, Brad Cuzner. Welcome to the show, Brad.
Hey, excited to be here.
Appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much. Maybe if we can start, we're both Cape Bretoners. I'm curious to learn a little bit about growing up when you first put on maybe a pair of skates and going through the minor leagues and so forth. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, am proud Cape Retoner, and former Eagle, but current Moosehead. So it's a love hate. I know I used to hate Halifax growing up back when I was a kid, but yeah, when I was younger, I think I started skating when I was about three. Got going, and I have two older brothers who play. My dad was he was a hockey player, and he coached in Canada Games '95 and '99. So he was a big hockey guy, and then got into the politics. So that pulled him away a little bit. But yeah, I grew up in Glace Bay and played my years up until U15, just all through Glace Bay. I was pretty lucky. We had Logan Shaw's a good friend. His dad, Gerard Shaw's a hockey guy. He was with Lewiston and Cape Breton and Moncton and all over the place as scout. And he's the former president of the Cape Breton Eagles and still does some work with them. So he was my coach growing up. And Greg O'Neill is another guy from Glace Bay. Mitch O'Neill's one of my best friends and played junior A. And Greg is a great hockey mind, and he's still doing some power skating. I think he retired, but he's doing more work on the hockey side, which is awesome. So they were my coaches growing up. So I was lucky that you get the horror stories of the minor hockey coaches, and I had two of the best. And Robbie Sinclair's another guy growing up. He played in Princeton, and so he came back and coached us for a bit. So I was super fortunate growing up in Glace Bay. You don't hear those stories very often where you get to be coached by three great guys and three great hockey minds. So I was pretty fortunate.
Awesome. And then you don't go too far over to the Eagles when you start your Q career. Was that draft? Was it free agent? I had a hard time finding that info. Were you drafted
Yeah.
into the Q or?
No, good question. I missed my first draft. I didn't get drafted my first year, and then kind of a cool story. I was living out west, out in Saskatchewan. I was going to Notre Dame, and so at the time we had about four guys that were eligible for the Q, and so they all went in the first and second round, and I was a 17-year-old, so. It was super early in Saskatchewan, and so we were all up at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock, whatever time it was, and all those guys went back to bed. Once they got drafted, they were all, hooting and hollering and whatever. And as the fourth round came, my internet actually shut off. And so I didn't see there was our pick, and then Halifax was picked right after. Cape Breton picked, and then Halifax. And so I got the call from Logan Shaw, who's one of my best buddies growing up. He was playing with the Eagles at the time. So he actually called me, and he was the one who told me that I got drafted. He was screaming into the phone, "Oh my God, you got drafted by Cape Breton. We're gonna play together, all this." And then the Wi-Fi came back on, and I actually found out that I got drafted there. So it was pretty cool to go back home, and I had been away for 2 years in Rosse and Notre Dame, and then to get to go back home and play in Cape Breton was pretty special. Live at home with mom and dad, and it was pretty neat to be back in Cape Breton.
Amazing. And then you spent 2 years with the Eagles, right? And then you joined the Moose. Uh,
Yeah, yeah. I
and
was I was I was lucky in Cape Breton. We had an older team in Cape Breton. We had some pretty good guys. Nick McNeil was our captain, a Cape Bretoner. I think we had 10 Cape Bretoners overall, and Luke Adams was there, played World Juniors, really good hockey player. And I was a guy probably shouldn't have made it, and I think they liked a little bit of work ethic there, and lucked out. But yeah, we had 2 good years. We were really good that year. We lost to Moncton in the first round, but they went on to go to the Memorial Cup. So they were a really good team. They had Gabriel Bork and Barbario and David Savard, and they had a couple NHL guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the next year we stunk with Cape Breton. We had a tough year. We played St. John in the first round. They went on to go and win the Memorial Cup. So it was but two great years. Cape Breton was treated me like gold, and I was lucky to be there.
That's great. That's great. Now, I
Yeah.
know when you joined Halifax, the Mooseheads at first,
Yeah.
um, you wore the number 27, but it wasn't for very
Sure
long.
did.
And I don't remember the exact time, but it feels like around Christmas time, maybe you gave a Christmas gift to a new French-speaking player that was joining the team, where suddenly you were
Yeah.
53. And
Yeah. I came in, I was on waivers, so there was no expectations, and there was no question of what number you want. I think I was 27 right from the get-go, and it was funny. We were at an event one day, and Cam Critchlow, who ended up being our captain that year, he kind of noticed on my jersey on my 27 that there was still a patch, and so the Velcro had Cuzner on it, but underneath was Drouin. So it was supposed to be Drouin before the season, and there was sticks with number 27 on it, Drouin, all this stuff, and anyway, so fast forward to Christmas, I was in Macker's office. Chris McDonald, who's with Moncton, and he's an awesome trainer, an awesome guy, and he calls me in. And he says. He says, "Do you like 27?" And I was like, "Yeah, I don't really care. Like I'm 19-year-old on waivers and just happy to be here." And he said, "Would you ever think about changing it?" And I was like, "Yeah, like sure." He's like, "Okay, well, what number do you want?" I was like, "This." I'm gonna guess this means that Drew Ann's coming, is it? And he was like, "No, Drew Ann's not coming. I don't know what you're talking about." I'm like, "Yeah, you would never ask me to change my number halfway through the season unless he comes." And anyway, so that was obviously the reason, and I think Joe looked a lot better in 27 than I did, so it was a good change for the organization. Joe was a phenomenal player and a really good guy, a really good friend, so I had no problem passing that over.
I see. Okay. I've wondered about that, so I'm glad to get you on the show and ask. And because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
I had
I
fielded a question before. The first logo to the show had the 27 on, and then people thought
yeah.
it was because of Drouin. So I promptly changed it to 53 with the new logo. So anyway.
I felt bad because my parents got a jersey with 27 on it,
Oh,
and
okay.
they had to
Yeah.
get another. So now we got both back at home. We got the 27 and the 53. So,
Right. Fair
but
enough.
no, he was a great player.
Oh, that's good. So, in terms of the Q, and then you went on to Saint Effects, but before then, I would like to kind of talk a little bit about some of your fights in the Q, and there is of course video footage of you wearing 27 on YouTube with some of your fights, and I've been asked before, and I don't mean to sound like I'm pumping your tires too much like a fanboy here, Brad, but some have asked me, is it just because he's from Cape Breton? Well, not exactly. For anyone listening, and especially for any young listeners that maybe have not watched some of the clips of Brad on YouTube and how he stuck up for his teammates. There's a couple of them that I'm just going to mention the weight class, and I'm actually going to post some of your fights on our
Yeah,
very small YouTube channel
scary.
that's growing. Not, it was something else. So, it looks like from what I saw in the fight card, and again, this is 15-year-old data, so we'll see, but it looked
Yeah,
like you were coming in at either 5'8" or 5'9". Is that
yeah, it's about 5'9", I would
okay?
say.
And it looks like you were about 166 pounds back then. Does that sound
That
right?
that would have been the high end, yeah,
The high
probably when I
end, yeah.
played. Yeah,
So I went through as much as I could find because, interestingly enough, um, some of the fight cards sites don't have all of them. They haven't really
yeah.
matched up and linked with YouTube. And so, just for our listeners, I think the only one you fought that was similar size was Ray Bork's son, from what I
Oh,
can
okay.
gather.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
That fight, but some of these other ones I was looking at for our listeners. So there was a 6'2", 205 Olivier Croteau who played for the Rockets.
yeah,
You stood your ground there, and then there was. Bear with me here. There was one. It's quite something to listen to, which I'll put on the channel when you fought Frédéric Meret. Not sure how to say it, but
Okay.
Chicoutimi-Saguenay's. So he
Yeah.
was 6 feet, about the same weight, it says, which didn't look like that on the video. Or
Yeah.
maybe he was
Yeah.
mostly skin and bones. I don't know. But he looked
Yeah.
huge. And so the announcer's saying, Merritt's holding on for dear life. And Cuzner manhandles him.
Oh God. I don't know if
And
I saw that one.
yeah, so this was after he had blindsided one of your teammates.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Nick Parker. I remember that. Yeah.
okay, all right.
Yeah.
So I couldn't tell on the because some of the videos it's not exactly
Oh,
high def,
horrible.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Not really
Yeah.
high def. So that
Yeah.
was one, and then there was another one, a big fellow from Drummondville, Maxime Villemer. I don't know if you remember that one.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So
He was a heavyweight.
he
Yeah.
came in at 6'2", 220, and Sawyer Henne, is it Henne or Hannah?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry,
Okay.
Hannah. Yeah.
And okay, so he crossed the red zone and he was hit, and then you go after him. And the funny part of that video is there's a guy that comes towards you first, and you just kind of barely stiff arm him, and he drops dead to the ice. I don't know if he was trying to drop a
No.
penalty. You may not
No.
remember that, but
No.
it's
I'll have
somewhat
to go
funny.
watch it again.
And so the announcer says Villemere has size advantage. So and just a wee bit of a size mismatch, he says. But you had come to your teammate's aid there, which is great. Another big boy, I don't know if you remember from St. John, Simon Depre,
Oh yeah. I remember that
6'4",
one.
6'4", 218.
Yeah.
And he just crushed someone at center ice, and you right away came and helped your teammate. But one of the ones that got me chuckling is Eric Gélina.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So 6'3", 216 for our listeners. Again, remember how big we said Brad was. So huge difference there. And the announcer comes in and he says, so Jelena blindsides someone at center ice. You go after him. And the announcer says, oh, baby, Brad Cuzner taking on the big guy. And about a few moments later, he says he just about manhandled Jelena.
Yeah.
So this
Yeah.
is 6'3", 216, and I think he
Yeah.
went on to the NHL. I could be wrong. I might be
Yeah. Yeah.
mixing it up.
Jean played a couple of years. He was a good
Did he?
player.
Okay, yeah. There's a
Yeah.
few Jillianas, and there's a few other fights. But
Yeah.
what I will tell people is, for me, when you've got someone on the team that is their first teammates, doesn't matter the size. I don't know what you were
Yeah.
thinking sometimes, Brad, but
Yeah.
I think
I
that's what
yeah.
endeared you to a lot of fans like myself. Of course, Kay Breton right away, but then seeing how you defended your teammates on the ice. So, for any of our listeners, I'll be posting those videos so you can see some real team protection there. Quite a bit more than the Leafs did recently for Matthews.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
sorry to put
Yeah.
that dig in there, but they needed a Cuzner
No.
on that team.
Yeah, no, listen. We were lucky. I probably I'm sure my mom wishes I had a little bit more fear for my life in a few of those, and I was always on it, like in the nicest way possible. I was so dumb and naive. Like I always thought it was better to go after a bigger guy because you couldn't lose. If you got beat up, you got beat up, and if you won, then
Mhm.
it looked better on you than it did them. But I I just remember. I'll tell you a story after this. One of the coolest moments for a family here. But I remember like we had guys. Trey Lewis was big.
Yeah, Trey Lewis. Yeah.
He'd fight anybody in the world. Like
Or
he
two at
was.
a time. Two at a time.
Yeah, yeah, he was tough as nails and loved it,
Yeah.
and Darcy Ashley, same thing. Like, I mean, Darcy makes me look big, and I remember Nate getting hit along the players bench, and Darcy was on the other side of the ice, and Darcy dropped his gloves immediately and skated across with no gloves on to fight the guy, and it was just kind of we just kind of had that type of team. Cameron Critchlow was the same thing. We had a lot of guys that just kind of enjoyed each other. Like we loved each other and would fight for each other. But about 2 years ago, my dad was consul general for Canada, and he was living down in Boston, and they were at an event, and Ray Bork was there, and someone says to him, he says, I want to introduce you to Ray Bork. So Dad goes up and he says, I'm Roger Cuzner, I'm from Cape Breton, and introduced. He said, he talked about Cabot Links, and he'd been up to Cabot Links and how much he loves Cape Breton, and And then he goes on and dad says, we have some shared history. He said, he said, my son and your son actually fought in the queue when he was playing in Quebec. And Ray said, he's like, well, he said, your son probably won because my guy didn't get many. And my dad said, he said, well, my son got in a lot, but he didn't win many. So he said he's sitting there and they're at an event and he's like one of those cool moments where I'm sitting there with my phone out and I'm watching, with Ray Bork, our two sons fighting against each other. He's like, what, you got a, Hall of Famer sitting here watching a fight of their two sons together. So he's like, we had a pretty good chuckle about that. And I was happy to come second in that one too, so that they could get a laugh out of that. But yeah, it was all fun. Yeah, I was talking to Bresson, Owen the other day about his fight, and we were giggling about like, it's you don't want to condone fighting now. I understand where the game's at, but they're fun to be in. Like once you're in them, it's the adrenaline's, it's never been higher. It's through the roof, and if it's for the right reasons, they're a lot of fun. So I probably picked the wrong guys, but they were a lot of fun while I was in them.
Yeah, and I'm sure when you come back to look on some of those, I've kind of gathered them and saved them, so I'll put them all in one spot on site. But
Yeah,
it took a little
yeah.
bit of searching because it's all from different channels or a
Yeah.
few different ones. But and some of them are short, but
Yeah,
you showed
so
up.
they're
So
they're all normally short. Normally the guys hits me a couple times and I can't stand up, but they were good.
I'll tell you, so some of them, looking back though, it's no wonder your mom might have been scared. Like
Yeah,
you took a few really in the back of the head too, and
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
right here,
yeah.
when they kind of had you down because of the height difference, and then kind of wailed on you. But fortunately, no worse for wear, it seems.
No, I remember a couple games. You build rivalries with guys, and something dirty happens, and you remember it for another game. And I remember
Yeah,
going into a game and just sitting around the kitchen table and for a pregame meal, and mom would come in and we'd be chatting, and I was like, I'm gonna fight this guy tonight, like, and she's just like white in the face. She's
uh,
so upset with me for saying, but she understand, like she could go out and run a power play in the queue. She knows that much about hockey, so she understood the game. She just hated that I
yeah,
liked that side of the game. But yeah, no, it's part of the game. I think it's valuable to have, and you grow as a team when you have that stuff happening.
that's for sure. Yeah, I can only imagine because I know for us and my stepson when he first played in his first game where there was checking.
Yeah,
And he's not a big boy, and some of them they really sprouted early in puberty, and
yeah,
we were basically you're just hoping that there's no injury, and you're pretty much waiting for the clock to just end, and
yeah,
on those
yeah.
first games, right? So I could see that.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
can get pretty dangerous. Yeah,
yeah.
so it's good to have you're able to kind of police themselves. My good buddy is kind of a I don't know if he'd want me telling this, but Logan Shaw played in the NHL for a while, and
Mhm.
he told a story about he ended up Aaron Ekblad, Matt Hendricks hit Aaron Ekblad from behind, and Logan was ended up being behind him, and um, so anyways, they ended up slashing him, and Logan fought Hendricks, and so then Ekblad was out for a long time. He had, he got hurt and he was out for 10 games or whatever, and Hendricks got suspended for about 4 or 5 games, and the next game back that Hendricks was back in was against Florida. So they were playing against each other again. So obviously, Ekblad wasn't back by this time, but Hendricks was back in the lineup. So the first game back, they said Sean Thornton was the tough guy on Florida
Mhm.
at the time, who was very tough. And so they said they're at the red line, and it was him and I think Luke Gazdick was the heavyweight in Edmonton at the time. And Thornton was like, "Okay, well, I'm fighting Hendricks tonight." And he's like, "No, like if you fight Hendricks, I'm gonna jump Huberto." And he's like, "Okay, well, if you jump Huberto, I'm jumping McDavid or whatever it was." And they were like, "Okay, well, who do you think is suitable uh, to fight uh, to fight Hendricks?" And he said, "Well, what about like Eric Branson?" he said, okay, sounds good. So then I guess Sean Thornton went into the locker room and was like, hey, Gabranson, you're fighting Hendrick's first shift. And he's like, okay, sounds good. They go out, they settle it up. And it was just such an interesting story of like the respect that they have on the fighting world of, I'm not going to fight this guy because I'm out of his weight. Let's find somebody that's the same. And then it's over with type thing. So it was a pretty cool story.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you spent some time I know, in Evansville and Wichita for a bit, and even the short time in Europe, right?
Yeah.
How would you compare that with some of your time at St. FX and Q?
Yeah, it was great. I left St. X and I was trying to trying to get down to the East Coast or over in Europe and went down and had a good buddy here, Jared Grant. He played in St. Mary's, so we went down to Wichita together and we had a great time, for the few months that I was there, and then got sent down to Evansville and met some great guys. Brad Burke is a guy I played with. He's from out west and became one of my best buddies. We had a lot of fun down there. It was a different world altogether, but they treated me like gold. They had a booster club there that, they they were basically like mom and dad. They fed us and they were cheering us on like we were in the NHL. So it was a great organization and first year for the organization, which was pretty neat. So
Yeah, right, right.
yeah, it was different. And then going overseas was a different world altogether. I was in Finland is I was very lucky. We had a guy who was he's from Finland and he went to play in Sweden for 5 or 10 years. So he understood the dynamic of being kind of the odd man out or
Mm.
the import player. So he was awesome that he took me under his wing, but I don't know if you know much about Finland, but they're not very it's not a very talkative bunch. So it took me a little bit to get to know those guys and to understand the culture there. But I had a lot of fun. I loved the country, and then Germany was just unbelievable. We had two other Canadians. We got to travel around and see the world and play some hockey on the side, and it was a great experience.
Amazing. Now fast forward, and now you're working with the Mooseheads. And
Yeah.
how did that kind of come about, for you to land that job?
I was out west. I was with I was working with the Canucks, Vancouver Canucks out west. And it had just I think I had just recently left. I worked at Skip the Dishes for a few months, and I ended up I just saw it online. I was kind of lucky when I was with the Mooseheads, and then I worked with Labatt breweries in Halifax and in Cape Breton. I got to know Brian Urquhart, who's the
Yeah.
president, and Travis Kennedy's the VP, and I kind of get to know them pretty well, which you don't normally get to do as a player. And I remember being out west and I applied for a job and out west and I actually called Brian just to pick his brain on the ins and outs of a organization and how he thought the role would stack up and how I thought I should present myself
Mhm.
for one of the for the job posting. And so we got to be pretty friendly. And then I just went through the regular channels. I saw it online. It was kind of at a point where Vancouver was getting a little far from home.
Mhm.
Seeing the parents, and my brother's got a kid, Finn, who's he's in U13 or U11 right now, so he's growing up, and I was kind of missing out on that, so I figured I should get home. But honestly, I didn't want to use any leverage on that. I didn't reach out to Brian. I just kind of went through the regular channels and went through the recruiting phase, and then met with Brian and met with Peter and Sam, and lucked out that I was the right man for the job. I don't know if they're saying that I'm the right man for the job anymore, but at the time I was the right man for the job. So it's an awesome organization. I was happy to be part of it.
Amazing. Yeah. What, like in your role, so is it business development manager? Did I get that right? Is it,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. And so what does that kind of look like day? I'm sure not every day is the same, but how does that look like day to day?
Yeah, This year was interesting. We lost a guy, Ryan McDonald was our game presentation manager, and so I took over his role as well. So I kind of had the both, but so I was doing a lot of the game present. Well, I was doing the game presentation role all year, and then on the business development, it's just trying to connect with the community as much as possible. So we have kind of three segments. You have your partnerships, your partnership money, you get your groups, and then you got your membership, your season tickets. And so just
Okay.
trying to, create awareness, get out to as many people as you can and let them know we got a hell of a product downtown that we're lucky to have. And so it's kind of helping and organizing, structuring kind of all three, helping with all three of those. Travis does an incredible job with partnerships. We have Glenn Robinson, who's season ticket
Mhm.
manager, who's great, and then Christina does a great job on the group. So just kind of trying to help. And I was lucky in Vancouver. I did a lot of that stuff, so trying to provide a little bit of insight where I can, and then trying to get out to the community as much as possible. We're pretty fortunate in Halifax here that the community is such a big supporter of the team. So trying to find ways to give back a little bit.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Thanks for sharing that. And I'm curious too. Sometimes we see season ticket holder of the game and a Canadian Forces member of the game, and I'm just kind of curious as a fan, what kind of goes into that process to selecting these fans.
Yeah, I wish I had a cool answer for you. The season ticket member of the game is just random. We just kind of take note of who we already have,
Mhm.
who we've already done, so we don't double up. But it is just that would be Glenn just pulling random names, random name generators. So nothing too wild and wonderful on our process. And then the CF family is all on their end. We have a great connection with them and a great partnership with them that has been going on for over 20 years now. And but that's one that they pick who they want to highlight, and kind of send over the script, as to their credentials and what they've done, and then we just kind of bring it to life during the game. But yeah,
Nice.
nothing too wild or wonderful on how we picked them.
All right. Nothing much behind the curtain. That's okay. I was just
No,
curious.
no, no, no.
I got the Zoom warning here that we're actually running out of time, so I'm going to run right to quick hits for us to
All
wrap
right.
up.
Yep.
Favorite beach in Cape Breton, Brett?
Geez. You know what? My grandparents bought a place on the Mire River for $3,500 back in the day, and doesn't sound like a lot now, but probably was back then. So I would say that would be the best spot, but if not, we'll say Mire Gut just since it's right down the road.
Nice, nice. And how many times has Brad Cuzner been around the Cap Trail in full?
Oh Jesus! I worked for Labatt. I was a territory rep for Labatt, and I was doing Cabot Trail once every 2 weeks, and so I want to say for PTSD reasons, I want to say 1,000. But I honestly, the trail is one of those things that it's so spectacular. But when you're driving 14 hours that day, it's not as spectacular when people are going 25 and trying to look outside. But I'll say 200.
Wow. All right.
Yeah,
And when's the last time you ate at Mother Webb's, Antigonish?
probably would have been 2016, my last year at university. We used to go for the birthdays all the time. They used to give free
Gotcha.
steaks on the birthdays, but awesome
Oh,
spot.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. I'm going to wrap it up there just so that we don't get awkwardly timed out here with my Zoom link. But such a pleasure, Brad. Thank you for joining us. And I'm really looking forward to posting this episode for our fans so they get to know a little bit more about you and everything you do now and what you've done before. So thanks for joining us, Brad.
Yeah, listen, that was awesome. The podcast world is awesome. It's great to get into and share with fans, and you're doing a great job. So I appreciate jumping on here.
Appreciate that, Brad. Great. So
Awesome.
we'll sign off on that note to our fans. And as always, go Moose, go.
Love it.